And saying good morning to our first guest in this 1-hour Newsmaker show, Democrat congressional candidate Tracy Mitrano. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be on.
Well, Tracy Mitrano, you're not just up against Congressman Tom Reed, you're up against COVID-19. Is it more difficult to campaign online than it is to go out in person?
Well, I'm a very social person by nature, so I miss being with people, going around the district. As you know, I have been doing it since the summer of 2017 and lived out in Chautauqua for 3 months at this time last year. And I look forward to being able to go back to it as well as we can, Brian. But, I cannot say, though, that it has really dramatically put us behind. We have shifted online. As you might recall, I come from technology, so I've had a Zoom account for 5 years. And we were able to just move right into the online world. We have a program, Tuesdays with Tracy. It's on 5 o'clock. You go to my Facebook page. Anyone wants to get on. Last week we talked with Farm Bureau and farmers. The week before, small business. Week before that, we had teachers. Today we're doing immigration. Next week we're going to do rural health care. Some excellent people who have been involved in it. And so in some ways you find new opportunities. And you know what was also interesting? Fundraising, of course. So much of the money that comes into our campaign comes from real people in this district. OMG. Because Tom Reed's fundraising, 90% comes from these big corporate political PACs, and it's all outside the district. So, I noticed that he brought in $100,000 less this last quarter, and we were able to exceed the quarter prior, what you call the fourth quarter in 2019. People are still interested. They're still concerned. Here's the most important thing about it, Brian. People now know politics is not entertainment. They know it, in moments like this, is about life and death. They care and they want responsible government that they have not had in 10 years under Mr. Reed. So, yes, I want to get back out there and see people, but I can't say as though it is terribly set us behind. In fact, we have found opportunities in it.
Democrat congressional candidate Tracy Mitrano, you referenced this earlier in your answer of the Tuesday's talk with Tracy, and today's topic will be members of the immigrant community. Tell us what you got planned there.
Well, as you know, immigration is a very significant issue, and the COVID has, as we've seen in matters of health care or income inequality, infrastructure issues, COVID isn't totally creating new problems. It is bringing to light the existing problems. So what we have there is an ongoing continuation of a conversation that could have been settled in 2013 if people like Tom Reed in Congress hadn't refused to even take the issue up when they were handed a comprehensive immigration reform plan from a Republican, Senator Rubio. But no, they just put up the hand. They're not going to even address it. We could have had a lot of these things settled. So what are we going to cover? We're going to cover what we need to get these visas for our farm workers here in this district. Farmers right here in my county of Yates sat down in 2017 and tried to talk to Mr. Reed about it, and all he could share with them was how exciting his new tax cut plan was going to be, which, by the way, national statistics are finally in, Brian. Working middle-class people got something in the range of not even $1,000. And the 1% got $48,000 on average back as a result. Is it all clear now that was a scam for the 1% in corporations? Are we all clear on that? Because that's all he could talk about instead of addressing the issues of immigration that affect this district. And that is very specifically, our agricultural community relies on migrant labor, and we still do not have just basic legislation in place to make it possible for them to get the work that they need.
Now, in addition to Tuesdays with Tracy, you've started another online video series, Coffee with Tracy. The first one, I think, was released yesterday. It was about healthcare. How did that go?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we filmed that maybe 2 months ago at this point, Brian. We just want to get the accurate and appropriate understanding of me on the part of voters, and not the face of hate that Tom Reed tried to create with lies and misinformation. And so was I willing to sit down and talk about the issues that affect all of us every day? Absolutely. And I hope that step by step, people will be willing to recognize they have a real choice in this upcoming election. And it's meaningful. It's not just about, who's got the swagger or who can lie the most. It's about actual people's life and death. Their grandmothers in a facility. They're young people we see are being affected. And I'll tell you what, Allegheny, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, if that virus gets out there in epidemic proportions, we have a real catastrophe on our hands, what you call a perfect storm. Why? Because people have had neglected health care for so long out there. The statistics about underlying disorders that they have, diabetes, obesity, smoking, no preventative health, nutrition issues. Sometimes it's a matter of dental care that they don't have. So that exacerbates nutrition issues. They can't eat the nutritious food that it takes to chew and swallow. So they've been on restricted diets. In other words, it's a mountain of problems that could come to pass. And then you don't have the facilities to take care of the people who get sick. So these are the areas that have been so terribly neglected. And by areas, I mean both geography and issues that have been neglected by Tom Reed 10 years now. We have a moment where we see clearly what's going on, matter of life and death. And it is time to make a change so we can address the needs of the people in this district.
Talking with Democrat congressional candidate Tracy Mitrano. On the Twitter page, it says you met in late April with union leaders. What are they saying about unions and how COVID-19 is affecting their works?
Well, the main issue that I understand unions are trying to address is to protect the workers who are, in essence, on the front line. Grocery store clerks, transportation people driving buses. In other words, the people that are still working, do they have the equipment? Are there the protocols in place where they work? Do they have the cooperation of their supervisors and employers, as well as the direction that supervisors and employers would give to the public meeting these folks? And, is all of this properly set in place to protect the people who sometimes make the least amount of money and yet are in a situation where they're having to work in the midst of this epidemic? Those are the principal issues right now. And, history shows you can't leave it to the kindness of employers or supervisors. There have to be some rules in place. This is human nature. This isn't for or against anybody. It's human nature that we have to have some rules so that the people without the bargaining power, the grocery store clerk, without the bargaining power against, the major chain for which he or she works, you have to have someone with enough of influence and authority to say, hey, I want to be sure this person that I care about is going to have a plastic shield, is going to have masks, is going to require people coming in to stay 6 feet apart and wearing a mask. Just to mention some of the most obvious approaches that we're taking to try to address this epidemic. That's what they're saying to me right now. It is about protecting the health of the people who are still on the front line of this virus. And then, of course, we have the medical and emergency services community also involved in these issues. Before the epidemic, Brian, I had already shared with a few people, but not publicly yet, that I thought our volunteer emergency service people do such important work for us all over this country that I wanted to propose that they get a 5% deduction right off the top on their federal taxes. You know what? After this epidemic, it's anyone who has worked in that front line, whether it's the grocery clerk or the doctor at the emergency room over in Arnott or James or any place else, that they get 10% off the top of their federal taxes for working at a time like this. Because, even with all the protection, this virus is so contagious that many people are being affected. And many of the frontline people, we have doctors right on down to a bus driver in Detroit or a grocery clerk. A story was earlier mentioned in national media. They've died. They've died from this. And so the least we can do as a country is thank those people for their service.
We're talking with Democrat congressional candidate Tracy Mitrano. Going to take a quick break. We'll be back, and we'll talk about the possibility of debates. Are there any debates scheduled between Tracy Mitrano and Congressman Tom Reed yet? And other issues. Stay with us.
The Ryan Agencies, your local, independent insurance agencies. Online insurance companies don't know the unique needs of our rural community. The Ryan Agency meets rural needs every day. Local insurance experts offering realistic solutions. Contact the Ryan Agencies today. Good local people offering realistic insurance solutions.
Insurance protection you can rely on. The Ryan Agency.
Hungry for something different? Go to this website, getlocaltakeout.com, for a list of restaurants still offering takeout in our area. Getlocaltakeout.com is brought to you in support of local restaurants by the Ryan Agencies and mysticmedia.com.
Back with Democrat congressional candidate Tracy Mitrano. Tracy, will there be any debates between you and Congressman Tom Reed as we get closer to the November elections?
Well, you have to ask Tom Reed that. Last time around, Brian, I accepted every single invitation that was extended to both of us. There were 8. Tom Reed does the same thing every time. He will accept 2.5. One will be probably in Elmira. The other one I predict will probably be in Chautauqua. And the half is in the editorial offices of the Post-Journal in Jamestown. And that's all he's going to do. You know why? He doesn't want to debate me. And the debate that we had in Olean, New York, just before the election last year, somehow, don't ask me how, that debate's offline. You can only get his and my opening remarks. You can't get the full debate. Curious? You know why? Because I think his team knows that it did not put him in an especially good light. And I was able to project who I am. At one point in that debate, with that kind of circumlocution that Tom Reed uses, try to make an association between me and an Islamic terrorist. Now, let's remember, we had someone in our district found guilty of harassing a sitting congressperson because Tom Reed likes to blow the whistle to get his base all riled up, and he doesn't understand that is the opposite of leadership. But at this debate, Brian, I was able to stand there, and honestly, I was genuinely flummoxed in the moment that he brought that up. And I explained, I grew up in Rochester. I went to Catholic schools. My life has been open book. I've worked in higher education my whole life. All the men in my family have served in the military or in law enforcement, including right now. And, what is he trying to say? My cousin, who was ROTC, Green Beret, Yale, enlisted and went over to Vietnam and fought. His father's buried in Arlington Cemetery for service in the Second World War. Tom Reed doesn't want that out there because he wants to create the face of someone who I am not. I am from this place. I understand what people go through. When I go and talk to a scope group in Cattaraugus or Steuben or any place else, I am very much at home. Why? Because those folks are just like my parents. My father used to hunt on the Cohocton River for ducks and over in Cattaraugus with his brothers for deer. So he tries to make me out to be something so contrary to really who I am and what I have done in life that he winds up looking ridiculous. And that is why that debate is not on there. So I'll predict you right now, he will not debate more than 2 times, and then that little half. Oh, by the way, when we did the half, Brian, the deal was that it would be recorded and then put up on Facebook. Guess what happened at the end of that? Oh, my God, the chip didn't work. It never went up. Claimed the chip didn't work. Tom Reed has tried to control his image and the people of this district, and that's what's kept them down. Let's have transparency. Let's have openness. Let's have debates all over the district so that we can be really clear that Tom Reed is a politically corrupt politician, and I am someone who is of this place, who has already made her career mark in life. I did that in my professional background. I just want to help. I think I can see we need affordable, available health care. We need good education, and let's end those usurious loans for higher education so people can improve themselves without becoming a servant to a bank. And then let's get the infrastructure we need in this district so we can be shovel ready for when this economy turns around again and people are looking for good investment. They will not look here when we don't have the health care. The people who come here to go to our good schools leave and go someplace else. Look at the demographics. It's as clear as day. And that we have the proper infrastructure. No one's going to come here and wait for someone to put in the internet. It has to be ready. And, there are studies from Chattanooga, Tennessee, right up through North Carolina. The cities and areas that planned in advance and laid the foundation, those were the ones that really have just been rising way above even the regular economy that, in terms of the stock market, was doing so well until this epidemic. We can do this, Brian. We have a beautiful place, beautiful people, good hearts. They want the right thing. Tom Reed has not been accountable. He has been an opportunist. Look what he's done with this virus. Do we have time for me to share a few words on that, Brian?
Go ahead.
Okay. So first we get whatever Mr. Trump says, Mr. Reed echoes. Oh, well, it's not going to be that bad. Come on. They're making such a big deal out of it. Then we move into, all right, we've got these close-ups, and everyone will be back in the churches by Easter, right? And then, how does it really change up? Well, he's in such a reflexive response to criticizing the governor all the time that when the governor is just trying to help, he starts kicking stuff up. You know what could have been time better spent for someone who's a congressman? Helping his own county that has through-the-roof statistics to prepare for this epidemic instead of politicizing this epidemic, which is the only thing Tom Reed knows how to do. He could have been helping people saying, we have to super protect our elderly. We knew that right from the start. It didn't even leave China before we knew that it was affecting people who are older and who have underlying conditions. He could have been in. How come he didn't take a leadership in saying some protocols? How come he didn't suggest some of these homes begin to, right out in the state of Washington where we had the very first cases, it was obvious that those folks in those settings are particularly prone to having this virus be fatal. He did nothing to help the people in Steuben County. And of all the 11 counties in this district, those are the statistics that are through the roof. He could have and should have been helping people instead of politicizing every issue. But that's all Tom Reed can see. Those are the only glasses he wears.
Now, there's been a lot of talk recently and speculation that Joe Biden, the Democrat presidential candidate, could be dropped and replaced by someone like Governor Andrew Cuomo. Do you have any thoughts on that discussion that's been going on recently about Biden?
I don't, Brian. And here's why. I can understand why people ask about national politics to aspiring regional congressperson. My focus, 100%, is on the people in this district, and I really, really mean it. I have some concerns about the Democratic National Party. If I could have primaried Tom Reed as a moderate Republican, I would have. But come on, we know how a party machine works. That would have been unsuccessful. You can't run as an independent. You have to run, if you're going to run seriously in a congressional district like this, you have to run on one of the two main parties. But I'm not terribly concerned because I am genuinely concerned about the people in this district and how they have been neglected for 10 years now. And so what will be. I can guarantee you I do not have any, red phone to the Biden campaign or anybody else in national politics. I am concerned about what's happening right here in this district. And honestly, I wish I could throw the two-party system away and stand there with Mr. Reed, the incumbent, debate him in every single county in this district, and just let people decide on what they see in front of them, how they hear it portrayed, what they want, and how they think they are best going to get what they expect from the federal government. And just forget all the other politics. The politics is what is used to hoodwink people. And it has been successful, but I'm telling you, now with this virus, people are really beginning to think, what is the government supposed to do or not do? What do I expect of my congressperson or any other elected office? People are starting to get down to brass tacks, and I think that's a good thing. It's a shame it had to come at the expense of this awful epidemic.
We're down to just under a couple of minutes with Democrat Tracy Mitrano. Tracy, any final thoughts?
Yes, sir. I think Tom Reed, who doesn't seem to have an original thought, he can only stand there and talk about these stimulus acts and say, okay, yeah, now we're passing this one, without taking any notice of how the banks made out, special interests like Boeing or the airlines, agriculture suffering. Did he stand up for them? 97% of this district is zone agricultural. Did he stand up for the farmers in these stimulus acts? Couldn't have. First of all, I'd never heard him say a word one. But secondly, the farmers are still suffering under these acts, and he still doesn't speak up. And then, of course, how the small business people got completely taken with this bill that came from the president and went through the Senate before it even went down to a democratically controlled House. But you think that Tom Reed would stand up and say, this is a time to think of the future. Let's get the internet out here. Let's use these stimulus bills to do it. But all he knows how to say is next time. Anytime a farmer says to him, when am I going to get some help here? Real help, not a little trickle. Real help. Oh, it's in the next bill. It's in the next bill. It's in the next bill. That's all he knows how to say. It's not sufficient. People need real help in this district, and we haven't seen the end of the epidemic when it starts to hit more into these rural areas. And honestly, people are going to have to look for leadership elsewhere. They're not going to find it in Tom Reed.
With that, we have to leave it. Democrat Tracy Mitrano, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. It's always a pleasure. You always wake me up in the morning, and so I'm really glad to participate with you. Thanks again.
Well, thank you so much. It's AM 1480 at WLEA Hornell. We're going to break quickly for news. We'll be back with Dr. Gary Ostrower. Stay with us.